Right, my first idea for this video, it was supposed to be the 5 things that I hate about the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. Now, no bike is perfect, but to be quite honest, I was struggling to find more than 3 things, and even then, I felt that I was nitpicking. I've had this bike for coming up to 18 months, and it suddenly struck me that I'd not done a long-term report on the bike. Not a proper long-term report anyway. I get a lot of questions in the comments section. What do I think about this accessory? What do I think about that accessory? What parts have you fitted to the bike? Are you still happy with it? You know, every question you can think about that, in a way, I've answered in other videos, but I do appreciate that people won't have seen all the videos. So what I thought I would do is try to pull all those topics together in one video to try and answer some of those unanswered questions. The Classic 500 really has stolen a lot of time from the channel in this last 6 months or so, and I think it's high time that we gave the Interceptor some airtime. Now, first things first, a few months ago I made a video, the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 is a rust bucket. Fact or fiction? Now, the title of that video was asking a question. It was designed to provoke thought and curiosity. There seems to be a common opinion in the motorcycling world, especially by people who've never owned a Royal Enfield, that Royal Enfields are very susceptible to rust. And that video was set out to answer that question once and for all. Now, what I hadn't bargained for with that video was the stupidity and laziness of a lot of viewers. Some people only read half the title, the Royal Enfield Interceptor is a rust bucket fact, and then immediately launched into the comments without watching the video. A lot of people also read the entire title but didn't bother watching the video and immediately launched into the comments section, making comments that sort of displayed their opinion of which it was without even watching the video. And I still get comments from both factions almost daily. I honestly had no idea that YouTube was going to be so difficult, so I'll answer that question now. This bike is not a rock box and it's not a rust bucket, providing you take reasonable precautions to ward off corrosion. It is no more susceptible to corrosion than any other bike that I've owned in the last 10 or 15 years. Now, faults so far with the bike, I simply haven't had any. There's been no need for any warranty claims. There has been one precautionary factory recall related to the brakes, but I've examined mine myself and found them to be okay. And reliability has been spot on. The bike's never failed to start. I've never had any issues with any part of it. So as far as faults are concerned, I've got nothing to report, other than a couple of little issues which should have been spotted and sorted out at assembly and PDI but weren't. And that really only related to 1 or 2 components that hadn't been adjusted properly. There were no faults. Now, maintenance is a biggie that keeps coming up in comments and questions. The service intervals on this bike are 6,000 miles or 1 year, with an additional inspection at 3,000 miles between service intervals, which really just amounts to a pre-ride check, and there's absolutely no reason to involve a workshop in this. Now, the 6,000 mile or 1 year service is a pretty standard service. The only thing that is slightly out of the ordinary is valve clearance checks, which is a simple job that takes half an hour. Now, I can confirm that I have carried out the second service on my bike, not because of the mileage, but because it was over a year since the last service. No problems were discovered whatsoever, and the valve clearances were all within accepted parameters. It was just a check, no adjustment was necessary. Now, granted, this bike hasn't done huge mileage. I own 5 bikes, so it's difficult to put high miles on any of them, and it may be that higher mileage bikes will require the tappets to actually be adjusted. But at almost 2,000 miles since the last adjustment, this hasn't proved to be the case. Now obviously, running this channel, I do get a lot of questions relating to faults that people have found on their bikes. Now it's usually the Indian viewers, and there doesn't seem to be any common denominators. There are no common faults that keep cropping up. It seems to be sort of isolated one-offs, the kind of thing that you will expect from any high production machine. So reading between the lines, in general, I don't think there are any issues that anyone needs to worry about. Now, as I've said in the past, this bike is a great handling package, not just for the price, but it's a great handling package full stop. This bike does punch way above its weight. Handling's superb, performance is more than adequate, and braking is just as it should be. Handling can be improved further by upgrading the suspension, something that can be said of an awful lot of bikes on the market these days. And if you found the braking inadequate, I would suggest that's more down to your riding manner and skill set rather than the bike itself. There really is no necessity to upgrade the brakes. Now, I did install a DNA air filter early on in the bike's life. I'm still very happy with it. It does help the bike breathe a little bit better, and I've not encountered any problems as a result of fitting it. And I do have a new exhaust system for the bike. We'll see what that brings to the table in the next few weeks. Now, as far as other performance enhancing accessories go, and these are questions I'm asked a lot. Booster plugs, power commanders, and there's another product out there that name eludes me at the moment. My honest opinion is save your money. The main advantage of a booster plug is it resolves that stop-start traffic fueling issue that a lot of bikes have these days. The Bonnevilles are particularly bad for it. The Interceptor isn't. It behaves very well in stop and start traffic situations. There's no surging. The throttle doesn't act like an on-off switch that has your pogo out of junctions and stalling on mini roundabouts. The fueling is really well sorted on this bike. There's no need for a booster plug. Any other performance enhancements that a booster plug may give you are minimal. And as far as I'm concerned, the same goes for the Power Commander and other similar products. They are not going to turn your 650cc 48 horsepower Interceptor into a 1200cc 100 brake horsepower beast. The advantages will be minimal even if they are set up correctly by an expert, and the gains will be nowhere near commensurate with the amount of money that you spend. If you have money burning a hole in your pocket and you're itching for something useful to spend it on, become a patron of this channel. It'll be money much better spent, I assure you. Moving on to gripes about the quality of this machine. By and large, yeah, it's all pretty good. There is one area, however, that I feel Royal Enfield really lets itself down, and that's in the paintwork. In my head, there has always been two manufacturers who sit at extreme ends of the spectrum where paintwork is concerned. Triumph is the best in the market at painting the machines. No one comes near them. And I've yet to see a bike that I wouldn't give a 10 out of 10 for quality paintwork. BMW sits at the other end of the spectrum with a very shabby 1 out of 10. Paintwork is something they've never got the hang of. Royal Enfield sits at about a 1.5, maybe a 2. Now, whereas BMW doesn't put enough paint on and then they don't finish it properly after they've painted it, Royal Enfield, in my opinion, slaps too much on and then doesn't finish it off after they've painted it. On both the Interceptor and my Classic 500, orange peel is a major issue. And it's an indication they've put a very fast drying paint on in large quantities very quickly, with the guys on the production line that are responsible for flattening that paintwork off being on a tea break from the moment the clock on to the moment the clock off. The only saving grace that I can find with Royal Enfield's paintwork is that it is a fairly soft paint. So it's easy for a knowledgeable motorcyclist to rectify this horrible orange peel effect. I remember being quite shocked when I first saw the tank on the Interceptor, and the reaction wasn't much better when I first saw the Classic 500. It is an area where Royal Enfield needs to pull its socks up. Now, as far as the soft paint is concerned, I think this may be due to their domestic market and the environment that these bikes are used in. A very hard paint doesn't scratch too easily, but when it does scratch, it's the devil's own job compounding those scratches out. Soft paintwork is a little easier to scratch and scuff, but it can be compounded out very easily. And that is the only motivation I can think of for using a soft paint, because financially both materials cost about the same. Now, other areas that come in for criticism are the switchgear, the very plasticky, cheap looking switchgear. Now, plastic switchgear isn't uncommon. A lot of manufacturers, large and small, use plastic switchgear, although I have to admit the general build quality of the switchgear on these Royal Enfields doesn't inspire you with confidence at first sight. It's a difficult thing to put your finger on because they don't look badly made, they just look cheaply made. But so far for me, this switchgear has operated faultlessly. They've had plenty of good soakings, which would surely show faults on poorly made switchgear, but I haven't had any issues. Again, everything's worked faultlessly from the day I got the bike. Now, I really did rack my brains over the weekend trying to find some parts of this bike that really pissed me off, but I can't find any. And that, in a way, makes life difficult for me because it always comes over as though I'm gushing about this bike and I'm owning it with rose-coloured spectacles. That's not the case. It's a practical all-rounder that turns heads with the correct grade of quality in the right places on the right parts. It's a pragmatic bike that for the most part has been built with common sense and practical know-how that somehow just works at a price point that it shouldn't work at. I don't know of any other way to put it. It's a bike that has been built to a far higher standard than the humble Bullet or Classic 500. That's just a fact of life, that's the way it is. So if your bias towards Royal Enfield is based on those models, have a rethink. Yeah, when you first get on it, the foot pegs do seem to be in an odd place, but as a motorcyclist it makes sense. They're placed where they are in order to accommodate the engine and give good ground clearance for cornering. But that odd positioning, if that's what you want to call it, soon disappears. You get used to it. I mean, I'm jumping around between 3 bikes on a regular basis, yet apart from the first couple of rides on the Interceptor, I've never had an issue with the positioning of the foot pegs. It's just never come into the equation for me. Now, I hope that at least for a while this video will stem the flow of constant inquiries and questions, because I do sometimes feel like I'm making the same video time and time again. It's as though people think that the answers to these questions are going to be different a few months down the line, but I can't see anything changing. And if you've asked me a question and I haven't answered it here, I'm sorry, but I just can't accommodate all of them. I've answered those that seem to crop up most of all. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I do hope that you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, if you do subscribe, don't forget to enable notifications in your settings. Obviously, I'll be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.